Now, imagine having an invasive urgent surgery that leaves you writhing in pain, unable to relieve yourself properly, with chronic years of side effects, or further brutal surgeries just to clear up the damage. That's been the experience of thousands of mesh-injured men and women, with hundreds now fighting a legal battle for compensation following procedures using the material that was banned from use for certain procedures in the UK in 2018 due to grave concerns over potential side effects. The gruesome toll of patients who underwent pelvic mesh surgeries is evident, as England has had to open up a network of specialist removal centres last year, as only a few surgeons are able to carry out the procedure. Well, a debate in Parliament today has been looking at recommendations to the government on what they should do for victims, with the tales of those suffering as a result of its use truly harrowing. I'm joined now by surgical mesh victim Paula Goss. Paula, can you tell us a little bit about your personal story?
Yes, so I had issues after I had a hysterectomy, and with going to the toilet. So I ended up with a Rectopexy mesh inserted. I didn't know that, and I didn't only have that mesh, sadly. So my issues started in 2014 when it was implanted, and then continued on after that until I had to eventually get removal, which I couldn't get on the NHS and had to go private to get my removal.
NHS essentially, I mean, perhaps this was before the time when people realised that the application of mesh, particularly in pelvic surgeries, could come with particularly terrible side effects. But the NHS weren't then willing to undo that.
No, I mean, sadly, the problem you've got is with all mesh types, to be honest, but especially with the bowel, it's such a difficult surgery to remove this mesh because it adheres to all your organs. Most people who go through the removal end up losing their bowels, their bladders, and other parts of their internal organs, and it can just cause devastating effects. So there's very, very few that can remove our meshes. But even with the other meshes, the vaginal meshes, there's stories where they get part removals and then end up with issues. Some who go in with a surgeon who says they can try. It's difficult. They know how to put it in, are not experienced in taking it out, and I don't think there many are.
I mean, the government are now being given recommendations of how they should compensate or look after people like you who've gone through what I can only imagine is a really horrific experience with this. And there are thousands of sufferers out there. What are you hoping might come out of that?
Well, I'd firstly like to thank Alex Shelbrooke for bringing the debate to Westminster, and all the members that are speaking on there. My MP as well, Luke Hall, who's been instrumental in helping me through this process. The government, I think they're very blinkered in their view with regards to redress. I think they just think that we're a bunch of people that are just going after a bit of money. It's not that case. An apology, which we had last year, that's fine. But what does that apology do for your suffering? They've suffered for years and years, these people, and they're going to continue to suffer for years and years, even when the mesh is taken out. I've had mine taken out. I still have issues, different issues, but you're swapping one set of complications for another. And this is the scandal in it all, really. But I just hope that the government will finally listen, which they did eventually, with other procedures. But this is for all mesh type. It's got to be for all mesh type because they can all cause these complications. They're all either polypropylene or bio meshes, so they can all have the effect on people to cause these complications eventually. Some people, Paula, they may not. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, Paula, thank you so much for coming on, bravely sharing your story. And I have no doubt that, you had to give up work as a result of this, and I have no doubt that you are due some form of compensation. So Paula Goss there, who is herself a victim of surgical mesh gone wrong. Don, what do you think about this story? I get the impression with this, the government's thinking, well, it's too few people in number to really have to do anything about it.
I think you're right. And again, Paula's incredibly brave for talking out about this, because obviously in Paula's case, it's the pelvic mesh, and it's an incredibly intimate thing to happen to a woman, and to talk about that publicly is very brave. So fair play to her and the other victims that have come out and talking about it. And I think, it's not a small number, because no matter how small the number, Alex, these people are really suffering. I mean, I wasn't overly aware of what the consequences were, but listening to Paula talk there about it actually sticking to the internal organs and having to have your bowel removed and things like that, is just absolutely horrific. And yet, in the great scheme of things, you know, especially in times of COVID, it's a small number of people. But what they're going through is incredibly upsetting, incredibly painful. And the government do need to listen. And they just don't seem to. As Paula said, they apologised. You know, the report came out in July 2020, and it was sort of like, you know, recommendations were made. And the government did apologise. But Alex, everyone's apologising for everything at the moment, and still nothing gets done. People like Paula are still suffering, still talking about it to this day. And what are we doing for these victims? We're not looking after them. And we really should be. It's so important. And again, I think there is an issue here with it being, in the pelvic case, mainly women.
Yeah, it actually reminds me a bit of the PIP implant scandal, this one. So let's see how it's going to unfold. Yep.